of the valley, we rise so bright, where the news flows freely in the morning light. Yuba-Sutter live, where truth comes alive. Every Tuesday's a journey, it's where we thrive. Watch it unfold. Yuba-Sutter live, in the heart of our home. Be informed, be wise. Yuba-Sutter live, we capture it all. Policy debates, hear the people's call. With Yuba-Sutter live, you'll never miss a beat. Special reports hit hard, shining a spotlight. Yuba-Sutter live. Yuba-Sutter live.
cameras start to roll. Yuba-Sutter alive, watch the stories unfold. making sure we thrive. Yuba City Council, with Marysville in view. Yuba-Sutter live, it's the truth that comes through. Unit on Tuesday, the news comes alive. You are water agency, making sure we thrive. Yuba City Council, with Marysville in view. Yuba-Sutter live, it's the truth that comes through. Yuba-Sutter live, it's the truth that comes through.
I call the meeting to order. Allison Hasty, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
We accepted staff recommendations. We have several suspended expulsion contracts, EH 24-25-1, EH 24-25-2, EH 24-25-5, EH 24-25-7, and 24-25-8. All those expulsions were approved unanimously by the board to accept staff recommendations. We have one revoked suspended expulsion contract, and that's EH 23-24-47. And by unanimous vote, the board accepted staff recommendations. And then reinstatements, we had EH 23-24-29, and by unanimous vote, we accepted the staff recommendations. Now we have comments from the board. Mr. Steeman.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'd just like to take this time to welcome Roxanne Brown to our district. I look forward to working with you, and welcome.
Dr. Yang. Ms. Hasty.
Yes, welcome, Ms. Brown.
Frank Crawford. Gary Criddle. Our student representative? Okay. Well, we're certainly happy to have Ms. Brown as our interim superintendent. And the experience that she has brought to the district is to be commended. So we really appreciate her coming out of retirement and coming over and helping us. Now we have recognitions.
Good evening. Tonight we have some special recognitions that we would like to award. The first one is to our C-STEM Educator of the Year. On October 4th, Nikki Grimminger received the Educator of the Year award for her outstanding leadership in the C-STEM program. She was honored at the 14th Annual C-STEM Conference at UC Davis. She is still taking courses, and that's tonight, so she's actually in one of her last couple of classes now. We would also like to recognize the warehouse team. Again, they're not here tonight, but it goes without saying that the warehouse team works diligently to ensure that all of our schools have everything that they need in a timely manner. And Ed Services, we couldn't live without them. We would also like to recognize the ground crews. Esteban Ayala is here tonight. Come on up and get a handshake. And also here tonight is Ricky Miller. It is with great honor that we recognize the MJUSD Grounds Department. Extreme weather conditions to provide our schools with well-mannered and beautiful playgrounds for our staff and students. Don't be shy.
That's perfect. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Thank you.
Now the fun awards. Tonight we like to recognize our students for being nominated by a staff member for outstanding achievements in their school. We have Tinsley Lane from Browns Valley here tonight. And Leland Prado from Cedar Lane.
Okay, ready? 1, 1, 2, 3.
And we also would like to acknowledge our staff members from our BOGA. We have Amy Hansen. Judy Berry from Browns Valley. Krista Harriman from Dobbins. Rosa Zavala from Marysville High School. And from our Wonderful Stars program, we have Abigail Jones.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the school site representatives. Marysville High School. Is anybody from Marysville? Lyndhurst Elementary. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Lucia Hernandez. I'm the ASB president at Lyndhurst High School. And I just wanted to bring you guys some news today about our school. We just wrapped up our 2024 Homecoming and our Spirit Week, which was highly participated in. We also had a club rush on September 25th, which was a great way and opportunity for our clubs to get their information out there. Our Lyndhurst FFA has been busy with many activities, starting with 16 students attending the Green Hand Leadership Conference in Reading last week. 18 students will be going to the Shasta College FFA field trip this Thursday. Next Thursday, we welcome 450 MJUSD elementary schools to the LHS School Farm for our annual pumpkin patch. Lyndhurst FFA, Business Management, Construction, Sports Med, and Multimedia will be participating in the MJUSD Block Party tomorrow. We will be attending the Sierra Buttes FFA Section Chili Cook-Off at Lincoln High School today and the Spooktacular event at Bishop's Pumpkin Farm next week. Also, 5 of our FFA members will be attending the National FFA Convention and Expo in 2 weeks in Indianapolis, Indiana. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. MCAA, North and South Lyndhurst High School. Please state your name.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members, and cabinet. My name is Andrea Acosta-Quiroz, and I am representing South and North Lyndhurst High School. I would like to start with a recap of the first quarter. This school year has been packed with activities and opportunities for our students. This Friday, our Advent class, along with other students interested in college, will have the opportunity to attend an educational field trip to California State University of Chico. We have 2 volunteer opportunities for students this month: Olivehurst Elementary Annual Ookie Spooky event and Johnson Park Fall Festival. We gather and provide student volunteers for the school to earn community service hours and experience. In partnership with Johnson Park Elementary, we have started a mentor program with the students. A small group of English learner or EL students walk over to Johnson Park twice a week and mentor 1st and 2nd grade EL students within their classrooms. It has been a positive and rewarding experience. Lastly, South Lyndhurst Olivehurst location will be hosting our first Halloween trick-or-treat event with Johnson Park. 1st and 2nd graders have been invited, and we are looking forward to having them visit our school site. Thank you for the opportunity to share our school activities with you.
Thank you. Now we have opportunity for employee organizations to address the board. Marysville, mute us. Thank you, Andrew.
Whoever we are. So, as most of you know, but maybe a few of you don't, I'm Angela Stiegel. I am the president for the Marysville Unified Teachers Association. And in addition to kind of some of the usual items that we have, where, of course, we congratulate everybody who received recognition this evening, we do have some comments, though, that it's very important that we get out there this evening. I have heard a whole lot of talk about COLA, and I've heard a whole lot of talk about how the district has pretty well kept up with things and kind of like, why are the teachers and why is MUTA and why are other employees so-called complaining about things. So put together this little chart, and this just goes back to 2016-17 and goes up until this year. And so there's the COLA that has been passed on by the state to the district every one of those years. And if you go down just 2016 down to 2023, that comes up to a total of 26.85%. And MUTA and other units in the district have captured 19% of that. If you include the 8.22% from last year, that's 35.07% in COLA. And if you include what the district is offering us right now, that puts us at 22%. So while the superintendent is making more than the state superintendent of public instruction, the secretary of education, and the director of the CIA, Muta, and the rest of your employees are actually now taking home less pay this year than we did last year. We all have received our, pay stubs for September 30th, and myself included, all making less than we made last year. What's really interesting too is if you include within that what our health increases have been, in that same amount of time, Kaiser's rates have gone up at least 34%, and Blue Cross has gone up at least 31.5%. So yet again, we keep having this conversation about COLA, the cost of living adjustment, which is not a raise. As you can tell from this, your employees haven't received a raise in at least a decade. I can tell you that I honestly can't remember the last time we received an actual raise. I know the 1 year for COLA, the 2017-18, people might say, oh, but you got 3%. Well, the reason we got 3% is because we didn't get anything the year before. And which is the same reason why when you come down into 21-22 and it's like, hey, you guys got pretty close, you got 5%. Well, we were told that that was because we got 0 the year before, which the district said, oh, we got 0 as well. Well, here's the problem though. You keep going down that list and every single time we're not keeping up. And so just like COLA is passed on to the district so that the district can keep up with inflation, what do you think we're doing? We're not. I mean, I have teachers telling me about the fact that they cannot run the air conditioning in their home because they can't afford it. There are other employees in this district who have come to me and informed me that they now are forced to carpool with their spouse who also works for the district because between the two of them being district employees, they cannot run both automobiles to go back and forth to work. But the district received that. And for the district to continue to say that, well, different pots of money and this and that. And then the district, there are people within the school board who seem to think that somehow the 8.22% goes away at the end of the year and you guys like roll back or whatever. You keep carrying on that 8.22%. And then on top of that, you're going to have a 1.07% for this year. But yet still here we sit. And I have to say that I still am not seeing a whole lot of change in things at this point in time. It is still kind of the same old, same old. And one of the reasons I will tell you that is because I sat here after the last special board meeting in which the interim was appointed, and I listened to our board president tell Ted Langdell and everybody else who was watching online that the interim superintendent was going to be a real good fit for us because she knows how to handle the union. You know what? I don't need to be handled. My union doesn't need to be handled. My teachers don't need to be handled. What we need is to be respected. What we need is to be treated and respected and acknowledged and recognized as the professionals we are. The professionals who are highly educated, the professionals who give hours and hours and hours that they are not compensated for the education of the children of this community. We don't need to be handled. We don't need somebody who has experience in dealing with unions. What we need is for our school board to realize, for our president of our school board to realize that we are here doing the work every day. We're in these classrooms. These employees are on these campuses every day. We do not need to be handled. We don't need somebody who has experience in dealing with the unions. What we need is to have COLA passed on to us so that we can keep up with inflation much the same way that the district does. And so along those same lines, I also would like the board to realize how degrading and insulting it was to see the contract for the interim superintendent. While we're begging for 8%, our board is putting forward a contract this evening in which the interim superintendent, in addition to the over $300,000 that we're paying out for the superintendent for a year, we now have the interim, and no disrespect at all to the new interim. Welcome, by the way. This is not exactly how I'd like to be welcoming a new person to our district, but somehow this is how it ends up. But this is on the board and the district. If you look at this, $900 a day, plus $190 in per diem, plus 67 cents a mile, which if we're going back and forth to Reno is $160 in mileage. So that means $1,250 a day. Not even close to what any of us make here. So while you tell us that you can't afford us, you can't afford 8% COLA for us, you can afford $1,250 a day for an interim superintendent on top of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being paid out to our superintendent as well. And we should be okay with that. So like I said, we need to stop violating our contract. We need to stop ignoring us and patronizing us. We need to stop being demoralized. From our last meeting, we still have issues within our contract being violated. I will tell you right now that I am sick to death of having to explain that my unit members have 36 hours of professional development now, not 24, not 24 plus some 12, not any of it. We have an agreement that this board agreed to and ratified, along with my teachers union. And so stop violating my CBA. Stop treating us like we don't matter. Stop trampling on our rights. Treat all of us as the dignified, respectable human beings that we are that are here serving this district every day. If it wasn't for the students, think about that for just a moment. Thank you.
Operating engineers, local unit number 3.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ose Demang. I'm the business agent for OA3. I'm gonna keep it short. Numbers don't lie. So I don't know where you guys go shopping. I don't know where you guys buy your gas. I don't know what kind of mortgage you guys pay, how much you pay, how much you don't pay. But I can tell you, I go all over Northern California for the union. So whatever you pay at Costco here in Yuba City, that's why you pay in Fresno, in San Francisco Bay Area. Whether you go to Walmart here, you pay the same amount. Target, CVS, it doesn't matter. So the numbers don't lie. Our members are very disappointed, discouraged for the offer that has been put on the table. We're not begging, we're not complaining because they're doing the work. And some of them just receive recognition. So all we are seeking basically is leadership, support, guidance, direction from you guys so that we can, I would say, have a better experience than what we have now. For now, my unit, classified unit, is not happy. So we're asking for your leadership to help us in this process of negotiation and going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. California School Employees Association, number 326 and 648. Association of Management and Confidential Employees. Supervisory Unit. Now we're going to move to presentations. 10.1, budget update from Capital Advisors. Please state your name.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Barrett Snyder from Capital Advisors Group, joined with my colleague, Caitlin Chung from Capital Advisors, here tonight to give you guys an update and the public and the board on what's going on in Sacramento and at the federal government around school funding and where we think that might be going. Just to sort of set the stage of where we are in the process, that last summer, the legislature at the state level passed a budget. And in that budget, there were assumptions around what would be going on with state revenues. That all matters to us in public education for K-12 and community colleges because of Proposition 98. We really care about how much money's coming into the general fund. And so every month since then, since July 1, when the fiscal year started, we've been tracking revenue. And we've got some really good news, both for the prior year, 23-24, and for 24-25, beginning in July. Revenues have exceeded expectations to the tune of $3.2 billion in 23-24. And right now, today, this is all subject to change because we're still very early in the fiscal year, but right now we're up about $1.7 billion across all the general fund sources. So you add those up, about $5 billion up than what we thought. That's great for all of us, right? So what does that mean? A lot of this is driven by a formula. You guys may have tracked the last budget, but the legislature, as part of a deal to protect us in public education in the scheme of the rest of the state budget's pie, protected us, and Gavin Newsom and the legislature deserve a lot of credit for protecting schools in that budget. We basically got a whole even budget. Part of the maneuver to make that happen was they suspended the Prop 98 guarantee in 23-24. It created what's called maintenance factor. And all maintenance factor means is that they keep track of that big amount they suspended. $8.3 billion was the suspension. And it's like an OZ. They owe us that money. And they keep track of it, and we help keep track of it with the legislature. Remind them, don't forget, you got to pay that off. It's a one-time payment, though. And so that's important for all of us to keep in mind. The news is really good, but essentially what the formula that drives payment on this maintenance factor is that as money comes into the state treasury, we have first call on that money to buy down that maintenance factor obligation. That will come and roll out to schools in the state in a bucket of one-time money, however. You have to be very careful with that part of the money. There will be, as more information comes in, there'll also be a portion of that we hope will be sufficient to cover whatever the cost of living adjustment is on Prop 98 to pay for LCFF cost of living. Last time I think they ran the estimates on what that is. It's just shy of 3% is the projection. We will know what that COLA is. It's not something the legislature picks or invents. It's tracked with an index out of DC. It's just its own animal. We'll have all that data in April of what that is, but it seems to be tracking around 3%. So what that means is we need Prop 98 in the general fund base of Prop 98 to grow by at least that, so that all the LCFF funded districts like Marysville will get enough to get that COLA in statute. So again, it's early, but the trend is very good. I'll also say just economically, we keep track of what's going on. The Fed lowered interest rates, and we think that that's a little fuel for the economic fire to keep these revenues probably exceeding expectations is our guess. That's kind of what economists have been waiting for them to do to really get the general fund revenue to start ticking back up more than it has been. So that's on the state side. And then I'll let Caitlin talk about, we're tracking also federal money. And just a sort of general rule of thumb in the state, most schools, roughly 90% of the money comes from the state, 10% comes from the feds. But do you want to give a little federal update?
Yeah. So the new federal fiscal year started on October 1. We are currently operating under a continuing resolution because there has not been agreement on an actual budget for the federal fiscal year 2025. That extends current funding at the current level until December 20th. The hope being that they can then get agreement on a budget for 2025 before the 118th Congress kind of gavels out, because we have a new Congress coming in 2025 in January. If really what will happen in the budget is kind of still up in the air, depending on what happens in November, based on what the House and the Senate put out first for their budget before deciding to do a continuing resolution. Under the Republican-led House, they were looking at a $11 billion cut to the education budget. On the Democratic-led Senate side, there's about nearly $1 billion increase for Department of Ed. So it's a very big gap. That's part of the reason they have a lot of disagreement kind of on reaching a final budget. But that will largely, depending on what happens in November, what the makeup of each House is, kind of will determine what that is, and also who is in president come the next session if we do not get a budget before this current calendar year ends. So that's kind of where we are. Funding is kept at current levels, still funding as we were essentially at 2023 levels, because in 2024 we were working under prior year levels as well. So we're kind of just maintaining that spending level with the hopes that we can finally do a final budget, but kind of there's a lot of factors until after November, we're kind of still up in the air.
And then just to sort of where we go, the legislature is out of session right now. They ended their work at the end of August, so they're not doing any bills right now, but they're having interim hearings, and one that they're having next week is interesting and for you to be aware of, is they're digging into what, if the legislature has any kind of ongoing revenue to spend, augmenting the base of LCFF, and that by a fairly significant amount if the money were to materialize. That would be a really good thing, as sort of across the board, that as districts have struggled, in particular, I know this district doesn't have it, but 2/3 of the districts in the state are in declining enrollment. And one of the ways to offset that is to just put a big infusion into the base. That would benefit Marysville significantly if that were to happen. So I just wanted to let you know that sort of policy discussion is occurring. So where do we go from here? Every month we get revenue estimates, and so we're communicating with your staff around what's going on with revenue and kind of what that looks like. In November, the nonpartisan legislative analysts will put out a report. They do it every November. They look at what's going on with the state's economy, with the federal budget and national economy, and then sort of prognosticate about where they think the governor's budget might go, what that means for school funding. They're generally pretty good, so we always pay attention to what they say. So that'll be out in November. And then the governor will have a budget proposal on January 10th, and that'll kick off our sort of annual budget dance at the state level on what the final budget might be. So we'll keep you posted. It's, again, early, but good news so far. Yeah. And then just on the, we have Prop 2 on the ballot. This is the school facilities bond. Some of the polling that we've seen recently is it's sort of in the high 50s, depending on your turnout model. But a lot of local districts that have facilities needs like Marysville sort of depend on these matching dollars at the state level to really, build the facilities and maintain the facilities they need. And then going into next year, we're going to have a really new legislature. We're going to have, out of 120 lawmakers, we think about 30 to 35 of them are going to be brand new. And so that's always interesting for changes in leadership, changes of committee members and chairmanships, who makes the decisions about all kinds of policy and fiscal issues that matter to schools. So after the election, that'll be something we'll pay attention to. Issues that we're seeing teed up for January, there's going to be a big conversation next year on charter school reform. And so we're expecting that to eat up a lot of oxygen kind of in our space. In addition to, the governor has a big interest in a master plan for career education, and really rethinking how we educate kids from essentially sixth grade all the way through college and career, and really rethinking all of that. Big potential policy shifts across the board, and there's folks from higher ed are involved, people from the Chamber of Commerce. It's the governor's pulling everybody together. So we think those two things in particular are going to be of significant interest next year. And happy to take any questions you may have in this area as well.
Well, the one question I have is, would it be possible for the 25-26 COLA to be raised?
The 20...
For the 25-26.
For 25-26. So the COLA for 25-26, again, sort of it's in statute, and it tracks, do you remember the name of this index we track? But I can't remember, it's a really weird name. But it essentially tracks the costs of goods and services purchased, implicit price deflator. Thank you, Caitlin, remembers. It tracks the goods and services purchased by local governments. It has no connection to the actual costs, in my humble opinion, of what schools actually face on it. So it's this arbitrary number that the legislature picked 20 plus years ago, and that is kind of what we do. The legislature could to answer your question, choose to provide more above the COLA amount. That's a choice they have in any given year whenever they do the budget. And it's actually essentially what they're talking about in this special hearing that they're going to have next week is if you inflate the base, it's essentially like a one-time cost of living adjustment infusion, right? You could look at it that way. So yes, they could do that, and that's kind of on the table. It will really depend on what happens with this revenue trend and what they think they have to spend in terms of ongoing money and one-time money.
Are there any other questions for our folks at the podium? Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now we're at 10.2, presentation with K&N Public Finance LLC for the general obligation bonds refunding update. Please state your name.
Hi, good evening. Blake Beam with K&N Public Finance. It's good to see everybody again. I have a short presentation reporting back to the board and community following the successful refunding of outstanding general obligation bonds. The refunding bonds priced and successfully closed last month in September, locking in taxpayer savings of nearly $900,000. We were fortunate to catch a declining interest rate environment in anticipation of the Federal Reserve doing its rate cuts, in September, and just overall inflow of monies into the bond market. And so as we go through the slides here, we'll compare what was reported as estimates to the board last time and then what we actually were able to realize. The table on this first page notes that the interest rate locked in for the new refunding bonds is 2.587. That compares to the average coupon or rate on the outstanding bonds that were refunded of 3.4%. That's where the savings is generated, that decrease in interest rate. One of the highlights that came from the refunding process, each time you go to market, you have to meet with at least one of the major rating agencies. In this case, we met with Standard & Poor's. They affirmed the district's rating of A+. You can see where that falls in the chart at the bottom left within their rating scale. It's close to the mean for California K-12 school districts. Some of their more notable points that they mentioned in their report, which ultimately goes out to the marketplace and investors, is that Marysville carries a strong reserve position, has a growing local economy, and maintains its financial policies and practices in accordance with what's been board adopted. That A+ rating helped to contribute to the investor audience on day of sale. The larger the audience and more demand, the lower we can ask in terms of rates for the refunding bonds. So it does directly impact the success of this transaction. Here is where I mentioned earlier, we're comparing what was shared with the board back in July. At the time, we were estimating locking in a rate of approximately 2.64%, savings just under $800,000. Again, due to the strong rating outcome hitting the market at a favorable time, we saw a good reception where investor orders came in at over 78 million, whereas the district, was issuing just over 20 million of refunding bonds available. So that oversubscription is how we refer to it, of roughly 3.8%, again, helped us to further drive down the rates for the refunding bonds, and that directly impacted the increase of taxpayer savings of over $100,000 from what was estimated back in July to the final outcomes in September. The charts on the bottom right, or tables at the bottom right, reflect where the subscriptions came in for each respective bond maturity that was refunded, and then it also lists the top investors at the table to the bottom right, some of which I'll name: Eaton Vance, PIMCO, U.S. Trust Corporation, Breckenridge, Northern Trust, so on and so forth. So really a strong investor base. That's what we were hoping for. That's what we wanted to see at the onset. And we were very pleased with the outcome to see some of these big investor accounts come to the table with interest and help to drive down the cost of Marysville bonds for taxpayers' benefit. Again, this just summarizes the outcomes of this refunding process. The par amount, our principal sold of the refunding bonds, was just over $20 million at 20.6. The aggregate borrowing cost or true interest cost of 2.587 is what led to the annual savings, which is reflected in the table to the right. You can see the prior refunding debt service compared to the new 2024 refunding debt service. The term of the repayment was not changed. It was not extended. It falls in the exact same date on August 1, 2033 is the final payoff date. And annually, this refunding effort will save over $100,000 a year through that remaining repayment period. As part of Ed Code, we report back to the board. We have estimated costs associated with the refunding when we initially present. These are the final costs now that the transaction has concluded. So just reporting out for each financing participant, including investment bank, legal representation, advisory representation, rating agencies, escrow agent, so on and so forth. These are all of the costs. The taxpayer savings that I've mentioned through the course of this presentation are all net of these costs. So each of these firms and individuals are paid out of the proceeds of the refunding bonds before calculating what the actual savings are through the course of this refunding effort. So that concludes my short report back. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, the one question I had was, how do the taxpayers see any relief with this refinance?
So once the pricing results are finalized, we provide the new debt service figures to the county. The county is the one responsible for actually levying the tax and providing what the requirements are for each respective homeowner. So once we've provided them the new debt service figures at the lowered annual rates, then the county will adjust their levy position accordingly. And so each homeowner will get some piece of these annual savings through the life of repayment.
So we're looking at 25, 26.
Correct.
Any other questions for our financier? Well, thank you for your help.
Absolutely, thank you.
Now we are in updates for Department Administrative Services. Brian?
So I'd like to start off by saying that next week is our safety week, so we will be having a number of drills going across the district. We'll have some silent drills, some lockdown drills, earthquake drill, all of those kinds of things are coming up. So we'll be sending messages out to parents, just making them aware of what's coming so they're not surprised by all of that. And it's something we do every year just to make sure that our teachers are ready to go in case of an emergency. Our staff is ready to respond, that we can communicate properly during all of those as best we can. So it's a yearly event that's coming up. And the other thing we're working on right now is we're pushing hard. We've got staff at every school site doing a great job trying to collect what we call program funding forms, which is how we can determine income for our families, and which helps us with our unduplicated accounts, with our free and reduced type of counts. And so we've got forms out that we send to every student, and we've got staff at every site working really hard to collect those, because every form matters, and every form counts, and every one that we can collect will actually help our bottom line. And so we're putting on a big push. We've got until the end of the month to get that done. So I just want to say thank you to the staff at all the school sites who are doing that. They're working really hard to collect every one they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for Brian?
What's that? Oh, yeah, no, we don't do the nuclear one anymore.
Thank you, Brian. Business services?
Hi, good evening. Just one announcement. November 6th, we're going to be holding the flu shot clinic here at the district office in conference room 1. The information should be in everybody's email. You do need to register ahead of time, and you can contact our benefits office, Shelley Lohman or Christina Berg, if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Jennifer? Now we're at education services. Amy?
Good evening. We have been working on some PD. We've been doing finishing up our structured literacy series. We're almost done having all of our K-5 teachers trained in structured literacy, and we're also continuing our UDL training. So we have a cadre of teachers continuing on that training throughout this year. On December 5th, our after-school program will be receiving the Golden Bell Award. So we're really excited about the great work that's been happening in the after-school program. Last week on Thursday and Friday, I had a group of teachers at a CSTEM conference where our teacher received Educator of the Year. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for attending. And it was also very enlightening. We had many of our staff members actually presenting at the different sessions. And so they were showing great leadership, and it was well received and acknowledged through UC Davis. And then lastly, just a reminder that our block party for our CTE program is tomorrow from 4 to 7 on D Street between 3rd and 4th. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any questions for Amy? Personal services, Mr. Reeves.
Nothing to report out, but I'd like to welcome Roxanne to our district.
Thank you. It's your turn.
Okay.
Ms. Brown.
I've felt very welcome. I've visited 20 of the 24 schools. Start at day 7. My class for the foothills tomorrow. You want me to start over, or did you hear me? You heard me? Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I felt very welcome to the Marysville Joint Unified School District. I've visited 20 of the 24 schools as of today. Tomorrow I plan to visit the 4 schools in the foothills, but I have found that there is much loyalty in the Marysville Joint Unified School District. There's a high skill set that I have found not only with the teachers I've spoke to, but the cabinet and the principals, and people are very dedicated. And I feel like we just all need to take a breath and catch up and feel appreciated. And we do appreciate the work you're doing. The grounds, I have just been so impressed with the grounds crews because I've worked in several districts and the grounds are just beautiful. And I've been surprised by all of the growth out by Arboga. Last time I visited Arboga School, there were 3 portables. And the other day, my GPS took me on a roundabout way and I went on Goldfield and they're clearing the fields and they're going to have houses in about 18 months, and I'm just like, wow, where are we going to put these kids? For clarification, I am not getting mileage from Reno to here. It's just like the rest of you. You don't get mileage until once you get to work and do district business, so I wanted to clarify that. And but thank you. I always see smiling faces, and anything we can do, I'm willing to listen. And just give me a call, and I've really appreciated the lovely people here in Marysville Joint Unified School District. I mean, you're really a strong crew, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we're moved to the 12.1, approval of the September 10, 2024 regular board meeting minutes. Are there any changes or adjustments we need to make in those minutes? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion approved by Gary Criddle. Is there a second? Second by Allison Hasty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have one abstention. Motion carries. Now we're at the 12.2, approval of the September 25th, 2024 special board meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion approved by Gary Criddle. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Steeman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And one abstention? All right. Now we're at 12.3, approval of the consent agenda items 13.1 through 17.8. Are there any questions for any of those items in there that we need further discussion? Yes, Dr.
Yeah, I would like to discuss item 15, 12, 13, and 14.
15, 12?
Yeah, it's the visit to UNR.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify, why is there a large discrepancy between Lyndhurst and Marysville's visitations? So if we look at the agenda on 1512, what you see is that that's Lyndhurst's request. The request is $1,554 for 65 students and 7 staff members. On 1513, that is to UNR. It's a different event because it's on a different day. That's $2,100, and that's for 80 students with 8 staff. And then for 1514, it's Marysville, but it's and there's an error in the proposed agenda item on the summary. It says approve Lyndhurst High School. So if you look at 1514, the title's for Marysville High School's AVID class. But what you see is that it's for $2,500. So there's about a 40% discrepancy in the request between Lyndhurst and Marysville. And I'd just like to understand, why is there a large difference?
At the time in which the agenda is due, Marysville High was still trying to confirm their transportation, and so they overestimated. Marysville always overestimates their trip to ensure that they're under budget by some. And so they were still trying to confirm and lock down the buses. And so they put a little extra money just in case they had to look for a charter.
So do we know that it's not because Marysville is doing other things when they're at UNR? I just want to confirm that.
That is not my understanding, but I would have to get back to you on the itinerary. Would you like me to get the itinerary for both schools?
So to address the difference, if it's truly just a cushioning problem, right? They overestimated. The board president, I'm going to ask for clarification. Is it possible for us to nudge Lyndhurst's number up with the recommendation that they contact their Marysville peers to ensure that Lyndhurst students aren't missing anything and both budgets align with each other? So instead of having 1554, to nudge it to be the same as Marysville, on the condition that Lyndhurst goes and contacts their Marysville counterpart to make sure that they're not missing anything for the Lyndhurst students.
Can we change that agenda?
And then can we correct the error
Can we
also
up
in
the amount, Amy?
We can make the recommendation.
Yeah, I would like to make that recommendation. And then also make the correction in the note, because it references the wrong high school.
Thank you.
I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, then I'll do a formal motion to make that correction and nudge theirs to match. Do we need a second on that? Yeah, with the condition that they contact Marysville to make sure that it's an equal budget.
So if we approve the consent agenda with those corrections, then we would just approve it with all of the other consent agenda. So Amy, will you make that note.
I will make that note, and also, Dr. Chong, Dr. Yang, I will also ask a request and an itinerary from both schools and make sure that they are equitable.
Are there any other items we need to discuss in the consent agenda? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion approved by Allison Hasty. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Steeman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed. We have all but Frank Crawford is the opposed the consent agenda, but it passes. So thank you. So we're going to move to new business, and that is at 17.7. Accept the donation from Health and Human Services of Yuba County on behalf of the Ella Elementary School. Do we have any comment on that? I always do that. I mark it right, but then I say it wrong. Anyway, here we are, sorry. At 20.1, we are at approve the resolution 2024-25/10 and public health hearing, public hearing for the compliance with the pupil textbook and instructional materials incentive program act. Amy.
The purpose of this agenda item is to request the board to for a public hearing and approve the resolution for the 24-25 school year, certifying that the funds earmarked for the instructional materials are expended in compliance with the Pupil Textbook and Instructional Materials Incentive Act. The resolution ensures that each pupil has sufficient standards-aligned instructional materials consistent with the content and cycle of the curriculum framework adopted by the Board of Education. This is our yearly obligation to ensure that all of our students have textbooks in hand.
And do we have confirmation of that? When do we get?
To my knowledge, all students have hardbound textbooks, but we also have all students that have electronic copies, and so therefore we are in compliance with both.
Are there any questions for Amy? If not, do I hear a motion? It's a public hearing. Sorry about that. I keep wanting to move ahead. We'll move along as best I can. 21.1, thank you, Amy. 21, do you have a comment? Yeah. Well, it says resolution. Okay, sorry, Amy. Angela, I didn't see your hand up.
I'm not quite sure at this point in time if anybody in the room actually knows what in the world is going on with 20.1. It says approve the resolution in public hearing. So are we having a public hearing? Are we not having a public hearing before we pass the resolution? Did we just blow by the public hearing and open and close it? Did we just have the resolution? Like, I'm not even sure what is going on at this point in time.
I'm sorry. We are having a public hearing, and if you have something to contribute,
so
that
then,
would be
as
nice.
far as the public hearing goes, I just wanted to let you all know that I have heard plenty of reports from teachers saying that our students don't all have the books that they're supposed to have, especially in our, all sarcasm intended, beloved combo classes. But on top of that, just to kind of go along with this, is the idea that the district also has summarily stopped providing teachers' editions, physical teachers' editions to people. And I know you're going to be told that that's not happening, and I'm going to tell you it is. And so especially in combos, teachers are being told they can have one grade or the other in the hard copy, but not both. And I have some that aren't even elementary that are being told that, well, but if it's provided electronically, why do you need a hard copy of it? But just so you know, I am hearing reports. I don't see anything on here that told me what school sites are what, and it also says that the purpose of the agenda item is to certify that funds earmarked for, well, when there's no report attached to this to be able to see, I don't know what we're having a public hearing necessarily about. Is it just to kind of rubber stamp the resolution that's attached to this?
Help us out, Amy.
When we get a request that we need textbooks in the classroom, we fill the books from our stock. If we don't have books, we look at other school sites that have surplus and at their sites, and we move the books. When we don't have either of those, we purchase the books. It does take a little time to get the books here, but to my knowledge, we either have a purchase order available for everything, or books are in the hands. I can only put books in the hands of students when I know those books are needed. Again, I have to also say that we have online access, and that online access also makes us compliant because we do have a one-to-one ratio of computers to students. Therefore, having the online textbooks, it can be used while we are working on getting the print textbooks. As far as the teacher editions, I did send out an email last week. Actually, Sandra sent out an email last week asking principals to talk to their combo teachers to see what textbooks or TEs that they need. And I'd asked them to report that by Wednesday, that would be tomorrow, so we could get those ordered. But I also want to point out the Williams Act, which is what the certification is for, is really for the student textbooks.
Any questions from the board?
Amy, could you clarify your comment on that we have a one-to-one Chromebook and the electronic book is acceptable in lieu of a hard copy?
Yes. That is not our preferred choice, but while we're working on moving books from site to site, looking for books or purchasing books, it can be used.
So can a student in MJUSD opt out of having a Chromebook?
Parents have the ability to not sign off on the acceptable use policy. I am not aware of any that have actually done so at this point. So it would be at the school site level, but I haven't had any conversations with any administrators that any students have opted out of using the district technology.
So is it correct to then say, so if those statements are true, and as a parent of a student in MJSD, the form specifically says I can't opt out, I have to take the Chromebook. So is it true then all of our books have an electronic equivalent?
Our core books do, yes.
That would be considered. Well, let me clarify that. Is that statement true for those instructional materials that qualifies for Williams Act?
Yes.
Okay. And then can you, the other question I have, can you walk us through the process of the public hearing notice?
The public hearing notice in the attachment, we are required to put that notice in public 10 days before the board meeting. I do believe it went out mid-September, so it was well before the 10 days. They go out at school sites, it's on the district website, and that we're notifying community that we're holding a public hearing on textbook sufficiency.
And then what's on the notice?
I don't have a copy of it.
Or to give an example, what is typically on the notice?
It's the legalese, our required wording from the state of California. It just says that we are making sure that our students have textbooks and that we're certifying that they have textbooks. And through that certification, again, we meet compliance with them being on order because, again, we don't always know what our enrollment's going to be, and as kids come and go, we have to move and buy books occasionally. And this year in particular, in fourth grade, we actually have a bubble of students, and so we're having to purchase more books in fourth grade in particular. So we've actually purchased quite a few books this year for fourth grade.
Okay. And I'm going to circle back to the one-on-one Chromebook. Brian, what happens if I decided that I don't want to be responsible for my daughter's Chromebook and I return the Chromebook?
So at our elementary schools, I believe actually at this point all of them have stopped checking them out, and they've gone back to a Chromebook card in the classroom model because of the problem of damaged Chromebooks and things like that. So they're not actually going home all the time. Some of them may still be doing it, but the majority are not. Even at our middle schools, they've gone back to Chromebook cards so that they're not checking them out and sending them home because they're finding that they can keep them in better shape longer by doing that. And so we have a number, the Chromebook would be available in the classroom, similar to the textbook. So our students aren't taking their textbooks home at the elementary level, right? The textbooks that stay in the classroom, they're used during class. The Chromebook would be the same way. It would be available while they were in class, but not something that they would take home with them.
So if I understand that correctly, if a parent in MJUSD decides to not fill out the form, right? That student will still have access to the Chromebook inside the classroom. I understand your response.
No. No, at that point, if a parent were to do that, we would actually notify the teacher and say that student is not to be on district technology. They've chosen not to use it, and then the teacher would have to, those types of resources like Selexia or something, that we would have to find other means for interventions and things like that using some of those things.
Has there been historical precedent where a parent just opt out?
I'm honestly not aware of it ever happening that someone has chosen not to have technology use.
It's also important to note at the elementary level, it is very common that the books sit on the shelf or on the student's desk. When they use the book, the kids usually go to a shelf and pick it up. That's pretty common in elementary, or the books that are used often are kept in the desk. When a student needs to take a book home, there's always a book to be taken home. At the secondary level, it is also common in some classes that the books, again, stay on the shelf. Kids typically don't carry the books back and forth. It happens a lot in the middle schools. It's usually, okay, in the middle schools. You see more typically the math books go home more often than not than like the English big volumes. I don't know what high school does.
So in regards to the high school, we don't have enough books to have the luxury of having them all sit on our shelves. We also don't have the luxury of having shelves to even have them to sit on. So, sorry, I'm just saying. But also in regards to the whole Chromebook conversation, it's very difficult for me to say that we're satisfying the Williams Act by having a one-to-one when I know that I have students who have to wait weeks to get a Chromebook. But on top of that, I understand that we tell students to come to class prepared. I get that. And if just telling them that made it so, well, then one of my greatest frustrations for almost 30 years of teaching would be solved, but that doesn't do it. And so we have students who are coming to class, even in the high school, with Chromebooks that are not charged. And then lo and behold, they have forgot their charger at home. Ever happened to you? It's happened to me. It happens to them. But what happens when they get there then and they don't have one is we don't either. Year before last, I was given one Chromebook charger to have in my classroom. And when it disappeared, I was told, well, you got your one. Then last year, I was given one of the new Chromebook chargers. I have 36 kids in a class, 4 or 5 times a day, one charger. And so now this year, I may or may not have found a Chromebook charger that did not have a claim to fame on it. And so now I have one of each. Shh, don't tell, but I have one of each of the Chromebook chargers in my classroom. So I don't know how we're saying that we satisfy it that way. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss. And I'm not saying that I should have 36 Chromebook chargers in my room, but I think I should have more than one. You know, when a student comes to class and their Chromebook is dead, I could sit there and tell them until the cows come home that, okay, well, you should have your Chromebook charged when you get here. That's true, that's accurate. And by 16, 17, 18 years old, they should be prepared when they get to class. But it happens. And then I don't have a recourse for that. And I then do not have the ability, if I was using an electronic textbook, which, by the way, there isn't one for either one of the classes I teach. But if I had that luxury, I don't have 36 books sitting there to hand to that student. I also don't even have a Chromebook charger to hand to them to say, hey, here you go. Just plug it in and you're good to go. But I have a problem also with the idea that we're constantly going through principals to find out what's going on with teachers. If you're hearing from teachers that they're not getting teachers' editions, if you're hearing from teachers that they don't have enough books in their class, why are we not asking the teachers for that information? Why are we throwing yet another step in there? And I'm not to say, I mean, I would also like to venture a guess that our principals have better things to do than play the middleman in being communication on curriculum and instruction materials.
Brian, can I make a request? So we're under the assumption that, working on assumption that the one-to-one Chromebook is fulfilling the textbook requirements. I'm assuming that we have the trailing logs for access for the electronic textbooks. Is that correct? So when a student accesses those textbooks, I'm assuming that we have the metadata to be able to show a student accessing.
I would actually have to request that from the publisher because it's they host it. So we just go to their website and that data would be on their site. So I would have to request it from them.
So could we do a cursory survey, not of all of our books, but a certain book among a certain specific sections, and look at the open rates for those textbook at a known section time in the class? So we should align that. What I'm saying is that we should be able to show that during a class time, if 80% of the students are opening their Chromebook and accessing that textbook, we should be able to show that their attendance record should show that they're also inside the classroom at the same time. And we should be able to prove the utilization rate for the usage for that textbook, right? And that would give us a baseline understanding of how well our students are using those electronic textbooks.
Okay.
And if we randomly pick a couple books, randomly get the metadata, and randomly pick the date, that would provide us a good baseline of our textbook utilization.
Okay.
Use technology like technology is meant for,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I will reach out to them. It's not a request I made before, so let me start working through the channels and see where I need to get that information from.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Amy? If not, do I hear a motion? We got to close the hearing. There's a second. Second, Allison Hasty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now, do we have a motion to accept the Materials Incentive Program Act? Motion approved by Frank Crawford. Is there a second? Does the board want to table this motion?
I would suggest that we pull this item until the next board meeting, and so we can bring back more information, and that we can see about the chargers, you know, if there's charging carts in classrooms or just a plug, and that if the teachers, combination teachers have both, if example, 4th and 5th grade combo has both 4th and 5th grade and teachers' manuals, and so we do a little more research.
Frank, do you want to withdraw your motion? Do I hear a motion to table this item till next board meeting? Gary Criddle has made a motion. Second by Mr. Steeman. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is tabled. Now we're at 21.1, approve the provisional internship permits for the teachers listed in the 24-25 school year.
So this is known as our STIPs. We've added 2 additional teachers, both in special ed, one at McKinney and one at Cedar Lane, bringing forward recommendation of the board to approve these 2 hirings.
Are there any questions for Mr. Reeves? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion approved by Frank Crawford. Is there a second? Second by Allison Hasty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're at the 21.2 oral report and action to approve the employment contract for the interim superintendent, Roxanne Brown. Government Act Code 54956B. Do we have staff to discuss?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
This is Ms.
Yes.
Brown's contract.
Yes, it's recommended the board ratify the agreement between the district and Roxanne Brown as interim superintendent for the 24-25 school year.
Are there any questions from the board?
I just want to get clarification on how many days a week is she going to be on district?
Well, she's planning on being here 3 days, but I think there's flexibility with regards to that. I know it would be a total for 66 days throughout the year. So there's flexibility depending on what Roxanne chooses, but I think initially it's 3 days a week.
Because she has a cap of 71,940?
In that area, yes. There's a cap that you can make in retirement from STRS.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? If not, do I hear a motion? Motion approved by Frank Crawford. Is there a second? Second by Allison Hasty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The contract is approved. I have to read this. Yeah, I need all the help I can get tonight. Pursuant to the Government Code Section 54-953, Subdivision C3, the board provides this oral summary of the salary and/or fringe benefits for the employment of the contract of interim superintendent Roxanne Brown. The term of the contract is for 66 days, non-consecutive, and compensation is set at $900 per day. Ms. Brown will work up to 3 days a week unless responsibilities and duties deemed necessary required immediate action. Ms. Brown will also receive per diem payment of $190 a day, work to cover personal expenses related to performance of her duties, including travel and lodging. Now we're going to move to public comments, I think, and we have Angela Stiegel.
So, good evening again. First off, I would like to thank Ms. Brown for correcting me and everybody else so that we knew that the mileage was not included in there, so thank you for that. Also, I would like to let people know that I did get the privilege of meeting Ms. Brown, basically her first day that she was here in the district office, so I did appreciate that very much. And in that, just before I had to leave to go back to school to teach, Mr. Davis had come in, and I mentioned, because Mr. Davis had stated that before the superintendent Azrani was here, that our test scores at Marysville Joint Unified had just been plummeting and that they were atrocious and that they were in the basement, and that Dr. Azrani came in and basically saved the day, and that since then our test scores had been on an upward trajectory. I have our CASP results for 2014 through 22-23. Interesting trend. Our test scores were all going up until Dr. Azrani arrived. And then the reverse was true. Within that, though, one thing I would like to say, and it's something that at least a couple of people here in the room that work at the district office have heard me say lately, those test scores, though, those are not our students. They're scores. We need to stop labeling our kids. And so I went through, I do a lot of reading of Diane Ravitch, and she does a lot of research in regards to education and in regards to assessment. And so I have a quote from her that I think will sum things up pretty well. Anyone who truly cares about children must be repelled by the insistence on ranking them, rating them, and labeling them. Whatever the tests measure is not the sum and substance of any child. The tests do not measure character, spirit, heart, soul, or potential. When overused and misused, when attached to high stakes, the tests stifle the very creativity and ingenuity that our society needs most. Creativity and ingenuity stubbornly resist standardization. Tests should be used sparingly to help students and teachers, not to allocate rewards and punishments, and not to label children and adults by their scores. Every single solitary school report that comes up here is the same thing. It's the same cookie cutter. It's the same test scores. It's the same test scores over and over. And it's our same staff meetings that we're hearing over and over and over again too. And so I'll leave you with a last comment from her, which is testing is not a substitute for curriculum instruction. Good education cannot be achieved by a strategy of testing children and shaming educators. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last comment card is Brittany Vega.
Good evening, board members, superintendent, families, and present. My name is Brittany Vega, and I've been a health aide for MJUSD since 2016. I would like to address the lack of staffing in my department. In the spring of 2024, the board unanimously approved the reduction of health aides due to the COVID funds running out. Myself, along with other health aides, staff members, teachers, Angela Steele, and parents reached out via email or spoke out at the board meetings. We went from 12 health aides down to the dismal 7 that we currently have today. MJUSD has 23 school sites that we proudly serve. While I am fully aware that Dr. Falos-Rani led the board to believe that we only hand out Band-Aids and ice packs, I can assure you that is just not true. And it is my surprise that Dr. Fall went ahead and created the jobs as the wellness paras, and she said that they would be helping if us health aides were not at the school sites. And to my surprise, when I needed help in the beginning of the school year, and I reached out to my director to find out who our wellness para was, I was told that that simply is not in their job description. My day starts off at 7:30 in the morning at LHS. Between 7:30 and 7:55, I administer medications to students. By 8:30, I'm giving direct care to diabetics. If any of my diabetics choose to eat breakfast at school, I have direct care for that student. If the diabetic students choose not to eat breakfast prior to school, they have an opportunity to eat at the nutrition break. I have a student with toileting needs, and I help him anywhere between 7:30 and 12:22. By lunchtime, I have 2 direct diabetic care for insulin, and I administer medications. Throughout my day, I have many students come for panic attacks, medication, Band-Aids, ice packs, possible concussions, getting burned while they're in class, whether it's culinary or welding, students that are vomiting, asthma attacks, and the list goes on and on. I alone at Lyndhurst have 6 diabetics. With such a small staff, we can not function at an appropriate level to serve our students. I myself went from being responsible for direct care at LHS, South, and now this year I have South, Lyndhurst, Johnson Park, until yesterday when that was changed. While the district voted to reduce the jobs of the health aides in an effort to save funds, when we returned to work in August of 2024, the district obtained additional LVNs from an agency, as well as hiring back previous health aides to work as subs. Due to the recent changes in our coverage areas, I will now spend precious time driving from school site to school site instead of giving valuable care to my students. We need help. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
light. The cameras start to roll. Yuba-Sutter.live. Watch the stories unfold. Tune in on Tuesday, the news comes alive. Yuba-Water Agency, making sure we thrive. Yuba City Council, with Marysville in view. Yuba-Sutter.live. It's the truth that comes through. Tuesday, the news comes alive. Yuba-Water Agency, making sure we thrive. Yuba City Council, with Marysville in view. Yuba-Sutter.live. It's the truth that comes through. Yuba-Sutter.live. It's the truth that comes through.
In the heart of the valley, we rise so bright, where the news flows freely in the morning light. Yuba-Sutter.live, where truth comes alive. Every Tuesday's a journey, it's where we thrive. Watch it unfold. Yuba-Sutter.live, in the heart of our home. Be informed, be wise. Yuba-Sutter.live, we capture it all. Policy debates, hear the beat.